August 1945. The Pacific Ocean sleeps under a pale moon smooth as hammered steel. Somewhere east of Singapore, a black shape breaks the surface, enormous, alien, silent. Its conning tower rises like the spine of a sea creature, followed by the vast curve of a hull, almost as long as a cruiser. Steam hisses, salt sprays across the deck. This is the I-401, one of Japan's most secret weapons, a Sen-Toku class submarine, the largest ever built. Her hull hides an impossible secret, not torpedoes alone, but aircraft. Inside, sealed behind watertight steel doors, 3 Aichi M6A1 Seiran bombers rest on collapsible catapults, their wings folded like sleeping bats. Inside the control room, Commander Tatsunosuke Ariazumi grips the periscope handles. His voice is quiet, but it carries the weight of obsession. Maintain bearing 075. We surface for launch drills at dawn. The men of I-401 move like ghosts. They know the war is nearly lost. Tokyo is ash, the fleet lies broken. But orders are orders. Their mission, coded Operation Arashi, is madness born of desperation, a long-range strike against the USS base at Ulithi Atoll, where American carriers swarm like hornets. To reach it, they will travel over 30,000 kilometers, submerged, unseen, unstoppable. Each of these massive submarines carries enough fuel to circle the globe. The idea had begun years earlier in the smoke-filled rooms of the Imperial Japanese Navy General Staff, when someone dared to merge the two greatest symbols of naval power, the aircraft carrier and the submarine. When engineers first proposed it, senior officers laughed. A plane inside a Sub-1 admiral snorted. Why not a battleship with wings? But Captain Kamataro Ijuin, one of the naval architects behind the concept, didn't laugh. He saw a future where Japan could strike any shore without ever showing a flag. And now that dream, grotesque and brilliant, breathes beneath the moonlit sea. Ariazumi turns from the periscope, sweat glistening under the dim red lights. Launch crews to positions, he orders. Let's see if our birds still remember how to fly. Hydraulic motors whine as the hangar hatch begins to slide open. Sea air rushes in thick with diesel fumes. The men haul the first Seiran along a rail system, unfolding its wings, locking its floats, and arming its 800-kilogram bomb. On deck, the night wind howls. Rain spits. The ocean groans against steel. Prepare to launch. From the catapult track, Lieutenant Kazuo Akahori, Seiran pilot, stares into the dark horizon. He can't see Ulithi yet, or America, or even Japan, only endless water. He adjusts his flight helmet and mutters, "For the Emperor." The deck officer waves his lantern. The catapult roars. The Seiran leaps from the deck and vanishes into the storm. It's only a drill, but for a heartbeat, everyone aboard believes it's real, that they are striking back at last for Pearl Harbor. For this was always the plan, to avenge the humiliation of 1941, with a blow from the deep, to send the world's first submarine-carried bombers against the American heart. They called it impossible. But the impossible now hums through the night, deep beneath the waves of a dying empire. Tokyo, 1942. The war still burns bright with victory. Pearl Harbor, Malaya, the Philippines. The rising sun spreads across the Pacific like fire. But in the corridors of the Imperial Navy Technical Department, the laughter from earlier years has vanished. Rear Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto's triumph has proven the power of the aircraft carrier. Yet even as Japan basks in glory, Yamamoto's staff knows the truth: the United States will recover. Their factories will roar to life, and when they do, Japan will need a new weapon. Something beyond reach, something unseen. At a desk buried beneath blueprints, Captain Hideo Imanishi sketches a shape no one has ever built: a submarine longer than any before, one that could launch aircraft far beyond the horizon. A submersible airbase fast enough to escape pursuit, large enough to carry its own strike squadron. It is called Sen-Toku, meaning special submarine. Imanishi's hand trembles slightly as he draws the hangar tube, the catapult rail, the folding wing mechanism. If they can strike us from the sky, he mutters, then we shall strike them from the sea and sky together. He brings his concept to the Naval Design Bureau. The engineers stare in silence. A sub that can launch planes. It sounds like fantasy. One leans forward. How long Imanishi? How far could she go? 37,000 kilometers, Imanishi answers. Enough to circle the Earth. Enough to reach the American coast. That silences the room. Yamamoto's own death in 1943 will come before he ever sees the prototype completed, but his doctrine lives on in steel. By that year, construction begins on the first of the I-400 class. Each will measure 122 meters long, with 5 pressure hulls, 4 680 horsepower diesel engines, and space for a 3-plane squadron of Aichi M6A1 Seiran Clear Sky Storm. The Seiran is unlike any other aircraft, a twin-float attack bomber built from the skeleton of a Navy dive bomber, but designed to fold in seconds, wing stabilizers, and even floats collapsing inward like origami. Its 200 horsepower Atsuta engine can drive it to 300 knots, and its range, nearly 1,000 miles, gives it the reach to strike targets like the Panama Canal or Pearl Harbor from the sea. It is the most complex aircraft ever designed for the most complex submarine ever conceived. In the secret shipyards at Kure Naval Arsenal, work proceeds in total silence. Hundreds of laborers toil behind blackout curtains. Even among the engineers, few are told the whole story. The hulls are welded in sections moved at night under tarps, then assembled in dry dock under the cover name Project 71. By 1944, as American carriers sweep across the Pacific, the I-400 and her sister ships I-401, I-402, and I-404 begin to take shape. The plan evolves. The Panama Canal will be their first target. A blow to cripple American logistics, to slow their advance across the Pacific. 6 Seiran bombers launched from 2 submarines off Ecuador's coast would fly inland at dawn and destroy the Gatun locks, draining the canal and halting shipping between the oceans. But fate, as always, intervenes. In June 1944, the Japanese fleet is annihilated at the Battle of the Philippine Sea, the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot. Over 600 planes are lost. The Empire's air arm is shattered, its pilots gone. The Panama attack is postponed and soon canceled. By late 1944, Japan's situation is desperate. America's B-29 superfortresses pound Tokyo nightly. The Empire's once proud navy hides in shallow bays, too fuel-starved to move. Yet in the underground chambers of Kure, the dream persists. The I-400s continue to be built, fueled by the same defiance that began the war. Admiral Kosaku Ariga, reviewing the project, asks one last question: can they still strike back? Imanishi, now older, gaunt from rationing, answers softly, they can. But the war may end before they leave the dock. Outside, American carrier planes roar above the horizon. Avengers and Hellcats sweeping through the skies once ruled by Zeros. The Empire is dying, but the engineers keep working, welding, measuring, believing. For them, the Sen-Toku submarines are not just machines. They are revenge made real, vengeance for Pearl Harbor, for the humiliation that once turned laughter into awe. In December 1944, the first of these leviathans slides into the water. The I-400, her massive hull glistening under the searchlights, is unlike anything the world has ever seen. American reconnaissance never even notices. From above, the Pacific looks empty. But beneath its skin, Japan has built something extraordinary. A carrier that can dive a weapon that no one will understand until it is too late. Kure Naval Arsenal, early 1945. The once thundering shipyards now echo with the hollow clang of hammers and the faint whine of sirens overhead. Japan's empire has shrunk to a ring of fire, yet deep within this maze of steel rivets and secrecy, the Sen-Toku dream refuses to die. Workers in oil-soaked uniforms move beneath the ribs of a steel behemoth. The I-400 rises from its cradle like a whale of iron, her hull a seamless fusion of submarine and carrier. She is nearly twice the length of a Type 7 U-boat and 3 times the displacement. Her bow bulges outward, housing an enormous airtight hangar, 31 meters long, and 3.5 meters wide, large enough to store 3 Aichi M6A1 Seiran bombers, each one mounted nose to tail on a rail system leading to a 120-foot catapult. A veteran welder wipes sweat from his brow, whispering to a young apprentice beside him. "They'll never know we were here," he says. "She'll sail under the waves, then open her belly and strike the sky." The apprentice just stares. A ship that flies. Not the ship, the old man says with a faint grin. Her children. Every bolt in her hull carries that same quiet pride. The sense that even as American bombers turn Japan to rubble, something magnificent still rises beneath their feet. By January 1945, I-400 is ready for sea trials. Her sister ship, I-401, follows months later, commanded by Captain Tatsunosuke Ariazumi, a relentless man whose cold intellect hides an almost fanatical sense of purpose. Ariazumi had once served aboard the notorious I-8, infamous for its long-range voyages and brutal actions in the Indian Ocean. To him, this new command is redemption and perhaps a final chance at victory. When I-401 slides into the inland sea, even hardened officers of the Imperial Navy gasp. Her silhouette dwarfs every other submarine at anchor. Twin 5.5-inch deck guns guard her flanks. A Type 13 air search radar spins lazily above her conning tower. Inside, the air smells of lubricant rubber seals and electric ozone from the massive batteries that line her belly. Ariazumi inspects the hangar with engineer Lieutenant Commander Shoji Nakahara, who designed the catapult. "Time to launch from sealed hangar to flight," Ariazumi asks. 7 minutes, sir," Nakahara replies. "If the sea is calm." Ariazumi frowns. "Make it 5. When the Americans come, they won't wait." That demand becomes doctrine. Crews drill until exhaustion, folding, fueling, and arming the Seirans in record time. They learn to do it in total darkness, guided only by red lamps and muscle memory. The Aichi M6A1 Seiran itself is a marvel of engineering born from desperation. Chief designer Noriyoshi Ozaki had built the aircraft like a puzzle box, wings hinged to fold backward floats detachable in seconds. Tailfin rotated sideways to fit inside the narrow hangar. Despite its complexity, the Seiran flies like a thoroughbred. In tests over Lake Biwa test pilot, Lieutenant Susumu Ito achieves 295 knots in level flight, faster than most Allied torpedo bombers. Loaded with an 800-kilogram bomb, it can travel nearly 650 miles one way. When Ito returns from the first test, he lands, climbs out, and salutes. "Gentlemen," he says, "the ocean has grown wings." By spring, 3 operational Seirans are assigned to each Sen-Toku boat under the newly formed 631st Air Squadron, commanded by Commander Wakazato Takami. Their pilots train at Fukuyama under conditions so secret that even nearby units are told they are working on glider experiments. Each man swears a blood oath never to reveal the project. Their mission briefings are handwritten, burned after each session. Maps show the Panama Canal, the Ulithi Atoll, and at times even San Francisco Bay targets so far beyond Japan's shrinking front that they sound like fantasy. Ariazumi gathers his officers in the wardroom one humid evening. Cigarette smoke curls through the red glow of the lamps. "Our empire is bleeding," he says. "But the enemy must never believe we are finished. These submarines are ghosts. We will strike from nowhere, and the world will remember the name I-401. Silence. Then a single voice, Lieutenant Akahori, a Seiran pilot. "Sir, even if we cannot win." Ariazumi meets his gaze. "Then we die, proving we could." The room falls quiet again, the words settling like ash. Outside, American reconnaissance planes sweep the skies over Kure. None imagine that beneath their flight paths lies a weapon designed to strike from beyond imagination, a fusion of stealth and reach that no navy has ever attempted. The I-400 fleet begins its shakedown runs through the Sato Inland Sea, then into the open Pacific. Diesel engines rumble through the hull, a heartbeat of iron. At full power on the surface, she can make 18 knots, sluggish for a destroyer. but astonishing for something so massive. Submerged, she cruises silently at 6 knots, capable of staying hidden for weeks. Crewmen sleep between torpedoes beside spare aircraft, floats their hammocks swinging with the pulse of the waves. They share a single purpose: deliver one last strike worthy of the Empire's honor. But as the tide of war collapses around Japan, time runs out. Allied forces close in from every direction. The Philippines fall, Iwo Jima burns, and the Emperor's cities are hammered night after night by B-29s. Still, the Sen-Toku fleet remains hidden untouched, waiting for orders that might never come. And then in May 1945, a new plan emerges. One last gambit whispered through encrypted channels. Operation Arashi, the Storm. May 25, 1945, Kure Naval Base, Inland Sea of Japan. The war has become a nightmare of sirens and smoke. Every night, the horizon glows red, and every morning the docks reveal new wrecks smoldering in the shallows. Yet in a hidden cove east of the arsenal, 2 massive shadows rest quietly in the fog, I-400 and I-401. Side by side, their crews moving under whispered orders. In a low concrete bunker carved into the hillside, Captain Tatsunosuke Ariazumi, Commander Jun Okuda, captain of I-400, and a handful of staff officers stand around a map spread across an oil-stained table. A single lamp sways overhead, casting their faces in harsh yellow. The map shows Ulithi Atoll, a vast American anchorage in the Caroline Islands, the nerve center of the U.S. Pacific Fleet. Around its lagoon are icons, carriers, battleships, tankers, repair ships. A floating city of steel and fuel. Ariazumi taps the map with his pointer. "Gentlemen, this is our target. The Americans rest here before invading Japan. We will strike them before they strike us." He draws a line with his finger from the Japanese coast across the Philippine Sea, a journey of nearly 6,000 kilometers. "We will surface 500 nautical miles east of Ulithi, launch 6 Seirans under moonlight, and destroy their carriers at anchor." Okuda studies the plan, his brow tight. "It's suicide. Ulithi is ringed with radar. They'll detect us before we reach the coast." Ariazumi's tone hardens. "They cannot detect what lives beneath the sea. Once we launch, our pilots will fly low, no more than 50 meters above the water. They will strike at dawn and vanish before the sun rises." He pauses, then lowers his voice. "You all know what this means. The Seirans will have no floats. They cannot return." The room goes still. Only the faint rumble of distant bombs breaks the silence. In that moment, the plan changes from strategy to sacrifice. Each Seiran crew will launch from the submarine, fly 1,000 kilometers to Ulithi, drop their bombs on the anchored U.S. fleet, and crash deliberately into their targets, a kamikaze mission launched from beneath the sea. To Ariazumi, it is poetic symmetry, Pearl Harbor reborn, the sea avenging itself. Outside, mechanics swarm over the hangars, polishing and rechecking each aircraft. The Seirans are repainted dark green to blend with the night. Their Hinomaru insignia are overpainted with American-style stars and bars, part of a deception plan should they be spotted. Lieutenant Kazuo Akahori, one of the chosen pilots, sits in the cramped ready room, listening to the creak of the hull. He stares at a photograph of his fiancée folded neatly into his flight log. His wingman, Ensign Haruo Ueki, breaks the silence. "Strange, isn't it? We'll take off from a submarine, but we won't land anywhere." Akahori gives a thin smile. "No need for fuel planning, then." They both laugh, the short, brittle laugh of men who already understand their fate. By June 1945, the I-400 and I-401 complete their final loading. 6 Seirans, 6 bombs, 330 men, their target vengeance itself. But fate once again moves faster than orders. As the submarines prepare to sail, Tokyo receives devastating news: the fall of Okinawa. Over 100,000 Japanese troops perish defending it, and the Imperial Navy's last surface ships are annihilated. The situation becomes critical. High Command delays Operation Arashi, fearing the submarines will be needed closer to home. Ariazumi fumes in silence. He had trained his crews to perfection, and now bureaucrats in Tokyo hesitate. "We wait, and we die waiting," he tells his XO. Every hour we delay, another city burns. For weeks, I-400 and I-401 linger in the inland sea, hiding beneath camouflage nets as B-29s rumble overhead. Their radio operators intercept fragmented news of firestorms in Tokyo, of Hiroshima flattened, of American fleets moving closer by the day. Then at last, in early August 1945, new orders arrive, a red-sealed envelope from the Navy General Staff. Arizumi tears it open in silence. The paper smells of ink and sea salt. Revised directive Operation Arashi to commence immediately. Target Ulithi anchorage. Departure August 15, 1945. The timing is grimly perfect. The Empire stands on the edge of collapse, yet its greatest secret weapon is finally being unleashed. For the next several days, crews prepare feverishly. I-401 takes on fuel and provisions for a 60-day voyage. Ammunition, spare parts, oxygen canisters, every corner of the submarine is packed tight. Men work by lantern light, sweating in the thick summer air. Akahori and Ueki check their planes one last time, tightening the straps around their bombs. On the hulls, someone has chalked a single word in kanji: revenge. On the evening of August 10th, as the sun bleeds across the horizon, Ariazumi climbs the bridge and gives the order. Cast off all lines. Submerge to periscope depth. Course 180. The I-401 glides from Kure's narrow channel, her diesel engines rumbling softly. Behind her, the homeland burns under an orange sky. Ahead, endless ocean. Below deck, the Seirans rest in their steel wombs, folded and silent, waiting for the command to rise again, to bring fire from beneath the sea. None aboard know that history is already changing above them. While they slip quietly into the Pacific, far away in a White House in Washington, a single decision has already sealed Japan's fate. August 12, 1945, Western Pacific, south of Shikoku. The I-401 slices through the black water like a drifting shadow. Her twin propellers churn a narrow wake as she dives beneath the surface, disappearing into the quiet pressure of the deep. Above her, the moonlight fades. Below, only the low hum of machinery remains. In the control room, a faint red glow bathes the crew. Needles tremble on brass dials. The smell of oil and ozone lingers in the cramped air. Commander Tatsunosuke Ariazumi leans over the chart table, his hand tracing a thin pencil line toward the Central Pacific. Next waypoint 22 degrees north, 145 east, says his navigator. Ariazumi nods. Keep us below 60 meters until further notice. We are invisible from now on. Invisible, that is the word every man aboard clings to. The mission remains secret, even to most of Japan's surviving admirals. The I-401's orders, handwritten and sealed, are to cross the vast Pacific rendezvous with her sister ship I-400, and together launch 6 Aichi M6A1 Seiran bombers against the U.S. fleet anchorage at Ulithi. The goal: destroy the carriers that still threaten the home islands and restore a fragment of the Navy's lost honor. But the ocean has changed. It is no longer the Japanese lake it once was. Allied aircraft patrols now reach far beyond the Marianas. Radar-equipped destroyers roam like wolves, hunting anything that moves below the waves. For the crew of I-401, every hour is a tightrope between stealth and suffocation. Inside the pressure hull, or men share a world barely 3 meters wide. Condensation drips from the ceiling, dampening bunks and uniforms. The air grows thick with diesel fumes and the metallic taste of recycled oxygen. Every 2 hours, sailors wipe moisture from the radio equipment and pump out bilge water to keep the submarine trim. Down in the torpedo compartment, Petty Officer Okamura mutters to himself as he polishes the warheads. We sail with planes and bombs, but the Americans fly everywhere. Maybe we should stay down forever. His crewmate chuckles, rubbing the condensation off his cap. Then we'll grow gills and build an empire down here. Even in exhaustion, humor is the only defense. Ariazumi keeps to himself. He writes in his log each night, a habit from years at sea. Day 3. Engines steady. Morale fair. The sea is heavy tonight. I feel the weight of ghosts. He knows his orders are already outdated. Reports of atomic devastation have begun to leak through shortwave intercepts, Hiroshima, Nagasaki. The crew whispers of a new bomb, one that can erase a city in a flash. At first, no one believes it. Then a radio man intercepts a scratchy English broadcast. Japanese city, completely destroyed, unprecedented weapon. Arizumi says nothing. He only stares at the glowing map. That night, when the sub rises to periscope depth to charge batteries, the ocean is calm. Lightning flashes far off over the Marianas, illuminating clouds like fire. On deck, Lieutenant Kazuo Akahori and Ensign Ueki climb the ladder to stretch their legs. They lean against the steel railing, gazing into the endless dark. "Do you think Tokyo still stands?" Ueki asks. Akahori exhales. "Even if it doesn't, we go on. That's all that's left." The horizon flickers distant thunder, or perhaps the reflection of burning islands. At dawn, the submarine surfaces fully to take on air. The hangar crews test the hydraulic systems. The massive steel doors hiss open, revealing the folded Seirans inside. Mechanics move with quiet precision, checking bolts and seals, lubricating the catapult. The aircraft gleam faintly in the morning sun, sleek, beautiful, and doomed. Each man who touches them understands he is preparing a coffin that will never return. By August 13th, the I-401 has cleared the Bonin Islands. The radio crackles with coded bursts from Tokyo, frantic, half-deciphered messages about ceasefire negotiations and Imperial broadcast rumored to be coming. The words surrender and unconditional drift through the static like ghosts. Arizumi gathers his senior officers in the wardroom. The air is hot, heavy, electric. "The situation in Tokyo is uncertain," he begins. "Until we receive direct cancellation, our orders remain active." Okuda, commanding the I-400, signals the same through encrypted channel. "Proceed to rendezvous point. Await confirmation. Do not surface unnecessarily." Two steel giants now crawl silently through the ocean, the last weapons of an empire that refuses to admit death. At 1900 hours, they meet on the surface under a veil of mist, hundreds of miles southeast of Japan. Morse lamps flash between them, brief bursts of white in the darkness. The signal formation complete. Mission confirmed. Crews from both submarines stand on deck, gazing across the waves at their twin, another ghost from the same dream. Lieutenant Akahori watches from the catapult deck. "Strange," he murmurs, "to see a mirror of ourselves at sea." Ueki nods. "We'll both be gone soon. Maybe the ocean will remember us." Beneath them, diesel engines throb to life again. The Sen-Toku sisters dive, slipping back beneath the waves. Somewhere far above, American B-29s streak toward Tokyo again, unaware that two submarines larger than anything the Allies ever imagined glide silently through the depths, each carrying a small air force within its belly. For the first time in history, the sea itself can launch an air raid. But as I-401 heads east toward the Central Pacific, a faint signal crackles through the headphones of Radio Officer Matsumura, faint, trembling, barely audible under static. To all forces, the Emperor has decided to accept the Allied terms of surrender. Matsumura freezes. He replays the message twice before daring to approach Arizumi. "Captain, you must hear this." The words hang in the stale air of the control room. For a moment, no one breathes. The empire for which they sail, the dream that built this monster, may already be gone. August 15th, 1945, somewhere east of the Mariana Trench. The sea lies calm and featureless, stretching into infinity. Beneath it, at 70 meters depth, the I-401 moves through darkness like a silent cathedral of steel. Inside, the air is thick with tension, sweat, and disbelief. The submarine's radio room is a furnace of anxiety. Sparks crackle from the transmitter as Radio Officer Matsumura bends over his headset, sweat dripping down his temple. The voice comes faintly warped by static, echoing through miles of ocean and the limits of physics itself. It is the Emperor speaking to the nation. He can barely make out the words spoken in classical Japanese that even many of the sailors do not understand. But the tone, calm, solemn, final, carries through the interference like a bell tolling underwater. Matsumura signals for silence. The crew gathers in the passageway outside, craning to hear. Even Ariazumi appears in the doorway, his eyes narrow. The war situation has developed not necessarily to Japan's advantage. We have resolved to endure the unendurable and suffer what is insufferable. The voice fades, swallowed by static. Ariazumi steps back, face unreadable. For a moment, the only sound is the dull vibration of the engines. Then, from somewhere aft, a sailor whispers the unthinkable. The war is over. The words ripple through the submarine like a contagion. Men look at each other, some dazed, some relieved, others angry. In the torpedo room, one sailor laughs bitterly. Over, so what are we now, pirates? Another slams his wrench down on the deck. We sailed to die for Japan, not to surrender. Ariazumi returns to the control room without a word. He grips the edge of the chart table, knuckles white. His entire life, his command, his purpose, his honor, has been built on the idea that Japan's spirit could never yield. And now, with a single broadcast, everything has dissolved. Commander Shoji Nakahara, his executive officer, speaks quietly. Sir, shall we confirm the message with Tokyo? Ariazumi nods stiffly. Yes, verify it. But until we receive direct orders, we proceed. Hours later, confirmation comes in the form of a coded dispatch. All offensive operations to cease immediately. Return to nearest port. Obey orders of Allied forces upon contact. Ariazumi reads it 3 times. Then he tears it in half. He summons his officers. Gentlemen, this message is not from the Emperor. It is from the politicians who destroyed the empire. We will not dishonor the dead by surrendering our ship. The men stare at him, unsure whether they are hearing courage or madness. The I-400 and I-401, he continues, were built to strike America to show them that Japan's spirit cannot be buried beneath their bombs. I will not allow that spirit to sink beneath white flags. He leans forward, eyes cold. Prepare to continue Operation Arashi. Even his most loyal officers hesitate. Commander Nakahara looks him in the eye. Captain, if the Emperor himself has spoken, then to disobey is treason. Ariazumi's response is quiet, but it cuts like steel. Then I am already guilty. That night, the I-401 rises to periscope depth under a sky crowded with stars. The sea glows faintly under the moon, a peaceful, indifferent beauty that mocks the chaos of men. Through the periscope, Ariazumi studies the horizon. Nothing but endless ocean. He knows the Americans now control the air and sea for thousands of miles in every direction. His plan to strike Ulithi to send his Seirans roaring over the lagoon is now suicide without meaning. But meaning is all he has left. Down in the hangar, pilots Akahori and Ueki sit beside their aircraft. The smell of aviation fuel fills the confined space. Ueki runs his hand along the wing, tracing the fading paint of the American star they had used for disguise. Maybe we don't need to fly anymore, he murmurs. Maybe the war has flown past us. Akahori shakes his head slowly. No. Even ghosts must finish what they began. At dawn on August 16th, the 2 Sen-Toku giants, I-400 and I-401, surface side by side. Signal lamps blink across the waves between them. Okuda aboard I-400 sends, "Have received surrender order. Intend to comply." Ariazumi replies, "Negative. Proceed as ordered. Japan still has warriors." But even as he sends the message, the truth presses on him like the weight of the sea above. He knows the empire has fallen. No orders, no admirals, no bases remain. Only his submarine and its men drifting in a war that has ended without them. Hours later, a second message arrives, this time unmistakably authentic, bearing the seal of the Imperial Navy General Staff. Cease all hostilities. Destroy aircraft armaments and secret documents immediately. Proceed to nearest Allied base to surrender. The command is absolute. Ariazumi stares at the message for a long time. Finally, he lowers it, his expression unreadable. Burn the flight logs, he orders. Scuttle all offensive equipment. The men obey slowly, almost ritualistically. In the hangar, mechanics remove the bombs from the Seirans. The pilots drain their fuel tanks, then help push the planes, the pride of Japan's secret weapon, one by one into the sea. The folded aircraft vanish beneath the waves, their silver wings disappearing like ghosts returning to the deep. Akahori watches the last one sink, his face blank. "They'll never know what we built," he says softly. No Ueki answers, but someday someone will. Below, Ariazumi sits alone in his cabin, writing in his logbook by the flickering light of a lantern. The final entry reads, "Mission cancelled by Imperial Command. Orders surrender. I have failed my emperor, my ship, and my men, but the ocean remembers." He closes the book, sets it on the desk, and quietly removes his pistol from its holster. August 17, 1945, mid-Pacific latitude, 20 degrees north longitude, 155 degrees east. The morning light filters through the periscope lens like thin gold through glass. The I-401 drifts at periscope depth, engines idling low, the ocean around her calm and vast. Inside, the crew moves with the slow, deliberate rhythm of men who know they've run out of wars to fight. A faint salt smell clings to everything steel cloth skin. The air compressors hiss softly as oxygen is recycled through worn filters. Somewhere aft, a sailor hums the tune of Umi Yukaba, the Navy's ancient song of sacrifice. Its words, "If I die in the sea, may my body be water-soaked," floating with the kelp, echo through the hull like a prayer. In the captain's cabin, Commander Tatsunosuke Ariazumi sits motionless at his desk. The logbook lies open before him, his handwriting neat, precise, final. The pistol rests beside it. A Nambu Type 14 standard issue, the same model he's carried since his days on I-8. His uniform is immaculate, the brass buttons polished to mirror shine. Outside his door, Lieutenant Commander Shoji Nakahara waits, listening. He can hear the captain's breathing through the thin bulkhead, slow, steady. Then silence. A single muffled gunshot shatters the stillness. Nakahara's eyes close. He doesn't move. The men around him freeze, heads bowed. No one speaks. In the tight corridors of the submarine, grief is not allowed to take shape. It simply hangs there, heavy as the sea itself. After a moment, Nakahara steps forward, opens the door, and enters the cabin. Arizumi's body leans slightly to one side. The pistol still in his hand, the corners of his mouth faintly turned upward, the barest ghost of a smile. On the desk beside him lies a single folded note addressed to his crew. Nakahara reads it aloud, voice trembling. "To my brave men, I can no longer lead you where honor demands. Obey the Emperor. Live to serve Japan again in peace. The ocean will bear witness for us all." He folds the note back carefully, places it under the logbook, and closes both. Then quietly he orders, "Cover the captain. Post the ensign." Two sailors drape a white cloth over the body, then hang the Imperial Navy ensign behind his chair. No one cries. Instead, they bow, each man from the youngest machinist to the oldest petty officer, and file out silently. The command passes smoothly, almost ritualistically. Nakahara assumes command. "Set course 270. Surface at dusk," he says. His tone is calm, almost too calm. When the submarine rises later that evening, the horizon burns orange with sunset. The sea glitters like molten glass. The crew gathers on deck, the wind cool against their faces. Nakahara stands at the bow, holding a small wooden box, the captain's remains. "Commander Ariazumi gave his life to the sea," he says. "Let him rest where he always belonged." Two sailors lower the box into the waves. It floats for a moment, then tilts and slips beneath, vanishing into the deep. A few men bow their heads. Others simply stare into the endless horizon. For them, the war truly ends here, not in Tokyo, not in a treaty, but in this quiet surrender to the ocean. That night, Nakahara gathers his officers in the wardroom. The electric bulbs flicker weakly, barely cutting through the gloom. He opens a crumpled order from the general staff, the same message Ariazumi tore apart days earlier. "Proceed to port under white flag. Report to Allied command for surrender. Destroy sensitive material." He lays the paper flat on the table and looks around. "We obey the Emperor. We go home." No one argues. At dawn, the crew begins the ritual of erasure. Classified codebooks, cipher wheels, and maps are sealed in weighted bags and sent overboard. Spare torpedoes are rendered inert. Detonators dismantled. One by one, men carry out bundles of documents, dumping them through the aft hatch. The ocean swallows Japan's final secrets. In the hangar, the Seiran catapult rails gleam faintly in the early light. The planes themselves are gone, resting somewhere far below, but their ghostly outlines remain. Petty Officer Okamura runs his hand over the steel. "We built something the world will never believe," he says. Ensign Weki nods. "Maybe that's for the best. Some things are meant to die quietly." By the evening of August 22nd, the I-401 has crossed back into the Philippine Sea. Her radio operator picks up a coded message from the American fleet. Submarines of the Imperial Japanese Navy are ordered to surrender at designated coordinates. Surface in daylight, display black flag, and proceed under escort. It is the final humiliation. For the first time in its existence, the I-401 will surface not as a hunter, but as prey. Nakahara reads the order aloud on the bridge. The crew stands in silence, the salt wind cutting across their faces. Then slowly, he nods. "Prepare the flag." From a wooden chest, a makeshift black flag of surrender is unfurled. Nothing more than a strip of cloth, dyed in soot, tied hastily to the periscope mast. The men raise it in silence. No salute, no ceremony, only the dull flapping of fabric in the wind. For hours they wait, scanning the horizon. Then faintly, the shapes appear, destroyers gray and purposeful, slicing toward them from the west. American task group approaching reports the lookout. Nakahara's jaw tightens. "Hold course. Maintain speed 8 knots. As the destroyers close in, the lead ship flashes signal lamps. Heave to and prepare for boarding." The crew of I-401 stands at attention. They wear their uniforms, clean caps, squared boots, polished the last fragments of dignity they possess. The first American boarding party arrives by launch. Their khaki uniforms are spotless, their expressions wary. They climb the ladder, rifles slung eyes wide at the sight before them. A submarine the size of a cruiser, her deck lined with men standing silent under the white sun. One of them, Lieutenant John Arwine, looks around in disbelief. "My God," he mutters to his captain. "It's an aircraft carrier that dives." The legend of the submarine plane, once laughed at, once dismissed, now towers before him, steel and salt and silence. August 29th, 1945, Sagami Bay, south of Tokyo. The morning fog drifts low across the sea as the USS Segundo, an American Balao-class submarine, maintains her cautious escort position. Ahead of her, the massive hull of I-401 cleaves the waves like a black mountain. To port, her sister ship I-400 follows her decks stripped bare, her flag of surrender hanging limp in the wind. From the Segundo's bridge, Lieutenant Commander James C. Baldwin lowers his binoculars and exhales. "That's no submarine," he mutters to his XO. "That's a floating hangar." The American crew can hardly believe what they're seeing. The Japanese boat ahead of them is twice their length, with a hangar the size of a railway car and a catapult rail stretching across her bow. Even the destroyer USS Blue circling them looks small in comparison. One sailor whispers, "You could fit half our subs inside that monster." Over the open radio, Baldwin signals the flagship. Confirmed visual. Japanese sub has hangar deck and catapult structure. Request clarification. Are we certain this is a submarine? The response crackles back, laced with disbelief. Affirmative, Segundo. She's one of their secret Sen-Toku types. Keep her under observation. To the Americans, it's as if a myth has surfaced, a machine born of a desperate dream. On the deck of I-401, the Japanese crew stands rigid at attention. Their faces are drawn, their eyes fixed forward. The smell of diesel and salt hangs thick in the air. Lieutenant Commander Shoji Nakahara stands near the conning tower, cap in hand. His uniform is spotless, though his eyes are hollow. The first American officer to board steps cautiously across the gangway. Lieutenant Arwine, the same who'd first sighted the vessel. 2 armed Marines follow. Nakahara salutes crisply, then bows. "I am Nakahara, Commanding Officer, Imperial Japanese Navy Submarine I-401, he says in English, voice steady. "We surrender our vessel and crew to the United States Navy." Arwine nods, equally formal. "Lieutenant John Arwine, USS Segundo. You've got quite a ship here, Captain." Nakahara gives a faint, almost sad smile. "She was meant to change the war. Now she will only fill your museums." The Americans move methodically, cataloging everything: the twin-deck guns, the hangar mechanism, the folded catapult, even the strange hydraulic tracks that once carried the Aichi M6A1 Seiran bombers to launch. Inside, they find the empty hangar still reeking of fuel and oil, and the catapult pistons polished to a mirror sheen. An American engineer runs his hand along the rail and whistles. "You're telling me they could launch a plane off this thing from under the ocean?" Another replies, shaking his head. "It's nuts. Brilliant, but nuts." In the control room, the Americans find instruments labeled in kanji: pressure gauges, gyros, depth controls, radar screens. They marvel at the compact efficiency of the machinery, the interlocking bulkheads, the complex hydraulics that allow such a colossal ship to dive and surface smoothly. "Hell," Baldwin mutters under his breath. "We thought they were running out of steel." Turns out they were building this. Later that day, a formal surrender ceremony takes place aboard the USS Blue. Under the gray sky, both Japanese commanders Nakahara of I-401 and Okuda of I-400 sign documents surrendering their ships, their flags, and their crews. The ceremony is brief, almost painfully quiet. When it ends, Nakahara removes his cap and places it on the table beside the papers. He doesn't look back as he steps off the deck. The Americans escort the crews ashore at Yokosuka, where hundreds of former sailors now wander aimlessly through camps surrounded by barbed wire. The once proud men of the Imperial Navy, who had dreamed of striking across the world unseen, now find themselves handing over tools, maps, and memory. For the I-400 and I-401, their journey is far from over. Within days, teams from the U.S. Navy technical mission to Japan arrive at Sagami Bay. Among them is Commander F.W. Benson, an engineer with a fascination for new technologies. He takes one look at the Sen-Toku submarines and immediately grasps their significance. "These aren't weapons," he says quietly to his assistant. "They're prototypes for the future." The Americans strip the submarines of every secret they can find. Blueprints, flight manuals, radar notes, even fragments of the Seiran aircraft recovered from the seabed. Everything is shipped back to Pearl Harbor and then onward to Washington. But there's a problem: the Soviets. Under the terms of Allied cooperation, the Soviet Union is entitled to inspect captured Japanese technology. With Cold War tensions already brewing, the U.S. Navy fears that these underwater carriers, if examined, might inspire Moscow's engineers to build their own. So a decision is made in secret. In early 1946, the U.S. quietly relocates the I-400, I-401, and several other captured Japanese submarines to Hawaii under the cover name Project Road's End. Officially, the mission is to conduct final tests before disposal. Unofficially, it's to ensure that no foreign power ever sees them again. Aboard I-401, now stripped of her Rising Sun insignia, American technicians work day and night. They take measurements, photograph every compartment, and test her massive engines. The boat performs flawlessly, even under foreign hands. Her range and stability astonish everyone. Lieutenant Arwine, now assigned to the study team, writes in his report, "The concept is extraordinary. An aircraft-launching submarine of this scale could in theory strike any target on Earth without detection. It represents a new form of warfare. But history is moving faster than innovation. The atomic bomb has changed the definition of power. Missiles, not manned bombers, will soon be the carriers of destruction. The Sen-Toku idea is already a relic of a vanished world. And so, on April 1, 1946, orders are given. The I-401 and I-400 are to be sunk scuttled off the coast of Hawaii in deep water, out of reach of Soviet divers. The crews of the USS Segundo and USS Trumpetfish carry out the task. Charges are set, The Americans step back and watch as the black hulls, once the pride of the Japanese Navy, slide beneath the Pacific one last time. The sea closes over them without ceremony, the bubbles rising briefly before vanishing into silence. Lieutenant Arwine removes his cap. "She was a hell of a ship," he murmurs. "Too late for her own time." The ocean swallows the last of Japan's submarine planes. The machines that could have rewritten history, now buried beneath miles of water, remembered only by those who saw them rise from the deep. Pacific Ocean, off the coast of Oahu, April 1st, 1946. The water that morning is the color of dull silver rolling gently under a cloudless sky. Two American submarines, USS Segundo and USS Trumpetfish, idle a few miles north of Pearl Harbor's entrance. Between them, drifting silently in the swell, are the giants I-400 and I-401, the last ghosts of Japan's undersea empire. Their black hulls glint in the sunlight, streaked with rust and salt. Their rising sun markings are gone, painted over with dull gray, yet their presence feels imperial, still massive, proud, unwilling to fade quietly into history. Aboard the Segundo, Lieutenant John Arwine stands on the bridge, binoculars in hand. His voice is low when he speaks. "Never thought I'd see the day we'd sink something like that. They could have changed everything if they'd been ready a year earlier." His captain nods grimly. "That's the thing about war, Lieutenant. The right weapon at the wrong time is just scrap metal." Orders have come down from Admiral Chester Nimitz's staff, Project Road's End, top secret. The Sen-Toku submarines are to be destroyed in deep water, far from any prying Soviet eyes. Their technology, catapult mechanisms, hangar designs, aircraft deployment systems has already been photographed, studied, and locked away. What remains now must vanish. At 00:30 hours, demolition crews finish wiring the charges. The engineers have flooded the ballast tanks and sealed the hatches. No one aboard these American ships cheers. This isn't victory, it's burial. Through binoculars, Arwine watches the destroyer's signal lamp flash, commence firing. The first shell slams into I-400's hull, a thunderous crack that echoes across the water. A second follows, striking near the conning tower. Then deep below, timed explosives detonate a dull, rolling boom that makes the sea itself shudder. For a moment, the submarine lists bow, rising slightly, as if reluctant to go. Then she tilts forward and begins her final descent. The air rushes from her hatches in a cascade of bubbles that stretch toward the surface like a column of smoke. Within minutes, she is gone. The same fate awaits I-401. The Segundo's deck guns thunder one last time. The shells punch into her massive hull, tearing open her ballast tanks. The sound is muffled, almost tender, as if the ocean itself is taking her back. Arwine lowers his binoculars. The sea ripples for a moment, then smooths over. Nothing remains but the faint hiss of foam. "Depth here?" he asks. "About 200 to 500 feet, replies the navigator. "No diver's ever going to find her." Arwine nods. "Good. Let her sleep." Below the surface, darkness swallows the steel leviathan. Light fades, pressure grows. Fish scatter as the I-401 sinks slowly through layers of blue-green, then black. Her catapult rails groan, her deck guns break free, tumbling weightlessly. The hangar hatch buckles and folds inward. At 1,600 feet, the submarine begins to settle on her side. A small cloud of silt bursts from the seabed as she touches bottom, a gentle impact after a long fall. Inside her compartments, silence reigns again. The control room remains intact. On the captain's desk, still bolted in place, lies the old brass compass, its needle quivering slightly in the current. The logbooks and the Japanese ensign have long since dissolved, but their memory lingers in steel, in salt, in the quiet hum of history forgotten. For decades, no one will know exactly where she rests. Her story fades into rumor, half remembered by veterans and archivists. The Americans move on to a new kind of war, one fought not with dive bombers or submarines, but with rockets, missiles, and shadows. Yet the ghost of I-401 refuses to be forgotten. In the 1950s, whispers emerge among engineers studying the new Polaris missile program that a Japanese submarine once launched aircraft from beneath the waves. The idea of a weapon that could rise unseen, strike across continents, and disappear again takes root in military minds. The ocean, it seems, has not yet given up its influence. The concept that had once been laughed at a submarine plane evolves into something infinitely deadlier, the submarine-launched ballistic missile. By the early 1960s, both the United States and the Soviet Union will deploy fleets of submarines capable of launching nuclear weapons. In the design blueprints of those Cold War machines, the ghost of the Sen-Toku is visible in the reinforced hangar spaces, the retractable hatches, the launch sequences that echo the rhythm once used to send the Seirans into the sky. But for the men who built and served aboard I-401, that connection remains unseen, buried with their ship beneath 2,000 feet of water. Then 60 years later, in 2005, the ocean yields its secret. An expedition led by the Hawaii Undersea Research Laboratory (HURL) deploys two deep-sea submersibles, Pisces 4 and Pisces 5, to explore the seabed off Oahu. At 820 meters, their lights sweep across something vast, a smooth curve of metal covered in coral and sediment. Contact calls the pilot through the headset. "We've got a hull down here, big one." As the submersible circles closer, the camera feed reveals a massive structure lying on its side, the faint silhouette of a conning tower visible through the murk. Then, in the glare of the lights, the words appear faint, almost erased by time, yet unmistakable: I-401. The crew gasps. The ghost has been found. The images that follow capture the world's imagination. The vast catapult tube still intact, the heavy twin-barreled deck gun pointing uselessly into the dark, and the sealed hangar door that once concealed Japan's secret bombers. Historians call it one of the greatest undersea discoveries of the century. For the Japanese people, it is something more, a grave marker, a reminder of genius and tragedy intertwined, of a nation's boundless ambition and its final quiet surrender to the deep. As the camera pans over the wreck, a small school of fish drifts through the open hangar, glinting in the light. For a brief second, it looks as though something inside still moves, as if the Seirans might yet unfold their wings, waiting for a command that will never come. September 2005, off the coast of Oahu, Hawaii. The deep-sea submersible Pisces 5 drifts in absolute blackness, its floodlights carving narrow cones of brightness into the void. Pilot Terry Kirby steadies the controls, eyes fixed on the screen, as the wreck of I-401 comes slowly into view. The hull lies canted on its starboard side, the hangar door half open, coral wreathing its edges like scars. 260 feet long, Kirby murmurs. She's bigger than a destroyer. The voice of the scientist beside him crackles through the headset. Hard to believe this thing ever moved through the water. Look at that craftsmanship. Kirby tilts the thrusters, the submersible's lights sweeping over the deck. Every inch tells a story: rusted steel, encrusted rivets, remnants of barnacles clinging to the conning tower. The dual 5.5-inch deck guns still point toward the horizon, frozen mid-command. The catapult rail is buried in sand, but its outline remains unmistakable. Recording all this, Rolling answers the cameraman. It's like she's waiting to launch again. On shore, in the control van, marine archaeologists and historians watch the live feed in stunned silence. Dr. Hans van Tilburg, maritime historian with NOAA, leans closer to the screen. That's history lying right there. She carried planes, launched them from under the ocean. The world didn't believe such a thing existed. They watch as the submersible passes the hangar door, peering into the dark interior, where once 70 years earlier, men had knelt beneath red lamps folding the wings of their bombers. Now only silt drifts through the space like dust in a forgotten temple. Kirby's voice lowers, almost reverent. You can feel it down here, like she's holding her breath. For a moment, even the sea seems to listen. The discovery makes headlines across the world. Lost Japanese super submarine found near Hawaii. The photographs flood newspapers and television screens, the curving hull, the massive hangar, the forward gun still intact. In Tokyo, veterans associations hold memorials. Old men, once sailors of the Imperial Japanese Navy, weep quietly before black and white photographs of the I-400 class. Few of them had ever spoken openly of those submarines. Secrecy had clung to the project long after the war. Now the ocean itself has broken that silence. One of them, Lieutenant Ret Haruo Ueki, who had trained as a Seiran co-pilot aboard I-401, attends the ceremony in Yokosuka. Bent with age, he places a single paper crane beside a framed photo of Commander Tatsunosuke Ariazumi. He was not a monster, Ueki says softly to a journalist. He was a man who believed in ghosts, the ghosts of honor, of vengeance. But the sea took him gently. For many Japanese, the rediscovery of I-401 is both pride and pain. Pride for the brilliance of her engineering, pain for the desperation that built her. In Washington, naval historians study the newly released dive footage with fascination. Admiral James Holloway III, retired Chief of Naval Operations, remarks during an interview that submarine was a generation ahead of its time. The concept of launching aircraft or missiles from beneath the surface, that's the DNA of the Cold War deterrent. Japan stumbled upon it first. He pauses, glancing at the footage of I-401's bow. But she was too late. The war she was built for ended before she could fight it. The irony is undeniable. What had once been laughed at, the submarine plane, had not only existed, but changed the course of future warfare. The Sen-Toku class submarines were born from an empire's final delusion, yet they became the first step toward a new military age. In their steel frames lay the seed of submarine-launched cruise missiles, of nuclear deterrence, of weapons designed to strike without warning from beneath the sea. Back aboard Pisces 5, Kirby maneuvers closer to the bow, where the Imperial chrysanthemum once adorned the hull. It's gone now, eroded by time, but the faint outline remains. He holds the sub's steady lights dimming slightly as he speaks. 70 years, he says quietly. She's been down here since before most of us were born. I guess this is where all the noise ends. The submersible's cameras pan one last time across the wreck, over the cracked periscope, housing the corroded bridge railing and the silent hangar mouth that once held the Seirans. Then Kirby slowly pulls back the controls, and the I-401 fades into the dark, swallowed once again by the water that claimed her. Above the surface, the ocean is calm, endless blue. A Navy research ship floats quietly overhead, its wake spreading out like a ripple of memory. A journalist on board asks Van Tilburg, "Do you think the Japanese built her for revenge?" Van Tilburg studies the horizon before answering. Yes. But what she represents now is something larger, the moment when human ingenuity met its own madness. They dreamed of bringing the sky into the sea. And for a moment, they did. The breeze shifts. The sea glimmers under the morning sun. Far below, the I-401 rests in peace, her mission unfulfilled, her captain's ghost at the helm, her hangar forever closed. But in every submarine that patrols the world's oceans today, some small echo of her dream survives, proof that even the strangest laughter of war can become the whisper of tomorrow.